hastily caught back the black veil? A person who watched the interview between the dead and living scrupled not to affirm that, at the instant when the clergyman's features were disclosed, the corpse had slightly shuddered, rustling the shroud.
The corpse, it's like it comes alive for a second.
Retained the composure of death. A superstitious old woman was the only witness of this prodigy. From the coffin, Mr. Hooper passed into the chamber of the mourners, and thence to the head of the staircase, to make the funeral prayer. It was a tender and heart-dissolving prayer, full of sorrow, yet so imbued with celestial hopes that the music of a heavenly harp, swept by the fingers of the dead, seemed faintly to be heard among the saddest accents of the minister. The people trembled, though they but darkly understood him when he prayed that they, and himself, and all of mortal race, might be ready, as he trusted this young maiden had been, for the dreadful hour that should snatch the veil from their faces. The bearers went heavily forth, and the mourners followed, saddening all the street, with the dead before them, and Mr. Hooper in his black veil behind. "Why do you look back?" said one in the procession to his partner. "I had a fancy," replied she, "that the minister and the maiden's spirit were walking hand in hand." "And so had I, at the same moment," said the other.
Now we want to put this at level 1. These people are very superstitious. Yes? So when he shows up with this veil on his face on Sunday morning sermon, they're like, whoa, what's up with the sermon? But when he shows up later in the afternoon to conduct a funeral, there are people who, there's a woman who has got to be buried. When he leans over and looks at the woman in the coffin, a very superstitious old woman says, "I could have sworn I saw the woman in the coffin shake, shudder, like she's afraid, the dead body is afraid of the minister." Then, as they walk out of the church towards the cemetery to bury the girl, at the very back is the preacher with his veil on, and somebody looks back and says, "I could have sworn I saw the dead girl walking next to him." What has changed in these people's minds? Write it down. This is fascinating study. He has done nothing different other than put something on his face. The people are affected in what way by this? And why are they affected this way? Go ahead and jot down at 2A real quickly. Why do you think the people are so negatively affected by nothing more than the covering of his face with a piece of black cloth? Why should it matter so much to other people what you do? A 3B question real quickly. Have you ever been in a situation where people assume things about you that were totally not true? Have you ever been in a circumstance like that? They looked at you, you did something, you said something that was fairly normal, and for whatever reason, they assumed things about you. They assumed things about you, right? So for example, one of my students once said, "Worland is a strange town. I came from another place, and when I arrived on the first day of school, I just wore clothes that I always wore. But immediately, students in this building assumed that I was a certain kind of person because of the clothes I had on. They never talked to me. They never said anything to me, but they already assumed things about me by virtue of the way I was dressed." Why are human beings like that, do you think? And oh yeah, maybe let's say it more pointed. Why are we like that? Let's keep going. We're continuing now, getting more into the story. I realize it's a long story. It requires some focus for you to stay with it. Let's go ahead and really work at it, all right? Here we go.
That night, the handsomest couple in Milford Village were to be joined in wedlock. Though reckoned a
Page 277.
Mr. Hooper had a
Last major paragraph.
for such occasions, which often excited a sympathetic smile where livelier merriment would have been thrown away. There was no quality of his disposition which made him more beloved than this. The company at the wedding awaited his arrival with impatience, trusting that the strange awe which had gathered over him throughout the day would now be dispelled. But such was not the result. When Mr. Hooper came, the first thing that their eyes rested on was the same horrible black veil.
And here we go. So in the morning, he preaches a sermon with the veil. In the afternoon, he preaches a funeral with the veil on. In the evening, he's going to do a wedding between two beautiful people. Notice the adjective Hawthorne uses now. It's the horrible black veil. People are starting to get a little bit freaked out. They want to know what is going on with this veil over his face,
which had added deeper gloom to the funeral and could portend nothing but evil to the wedding. Such was its immediate effect on the guests that a cloud seemed to have rolled duskily from beneath the black crape and dimmed the light of the candles. The bridal pair stood up before the minister, but the bride's cold fingers quivered in the tremulous hand of the bridegroom, and her death-like paleness caused a whisper that the maiden, who had been buried a few hours before, was come from her grave to be married. If ever another wedding were so dismal, it was that famous one where they tolled the wedding knell. After performing the ceremony, Mr. Hooper raised a glass of wine to his lips, wishing happiness to the newly married couple in a strain of mild pleasantry that ought to have brightened the features of the guests, like a cheerful gleam from the hearth. At that instant, catching a glimpse of his figure in the looking-glass, the black veil involved his own spirit in the horror with which it overwhelmed all others. His frame shuddered, his lips grew white. He spilt the untasted wine upon the carpet and rushed forth into the darkness, for the earth, too, had on her black veil. The next day, the whole village of Milford talked of little else than Parson Hooper's black veil. That and the...
Let's go ahead now, just for summary's sake, at level 1. We've now been through our first day with the minister's black veil, and 3 things happen. Jot them down at level 1 real quickly. It's easy once you do it in your annotations to remember it. First, he comes and preaches a sermon. People are a little freaked. Secondly, he preaches a funeral. Some people can kind of get right with the black veil because of the funeral. But the third is the wedding in the evening, and that one, yeah, nobody likes this. Now we are in day 2. People have had a little bit of time to think and talk about it. Now we got some people that are about to get upset. What is going on with the black veil? Notice Hawthorne is giving you no indication as to why, other than at the very end of the first evening, the minister was going to drink a little bit of wine, saw himself in the mirror, wine spills on the floor, and he rushes out into the darkness without saying anything to anybody. Making you, the reader, also have to wonder, dude, what is up with this black veil? Here we go, second day.
The mystery concealed behind it supplied a topic for discussion between acquaintances meeting in the street and good women gossiping at their open windows.
I'm on page 278,
it was the
top
first
of the
item of
page.
news that the tavern keeper told to his guests. The children babbled of it on their way to school. One imitative little imp covered his face with an old black handkerchief, thereby so affrighting his playmates that the panic seized himself, and he well nigh lost his wits by his own waggery. It was remarkable that of all the busybodies and impertinent people in the parish, not one ventured to put the plain question to Mr. Hooper, wherefore he did this thing. Hitherto, whenever there appeared the slightest call for such interference, he had never lacked advisers, nor shown himself averse to be guided by their judgment.
Fascinating. Hawthorne says, at no point, well, I want to write this down at level 1, at no point does anyone ever just come up to him and say, dude, what's up with the veil? Remind you of a place you're familiar with, where everybody talks about everybody else, but nobody ever actually goes up to the person they're talking about and asks what's going on? Right. Hawthorne is studying human psychology here, isn't he? We love to talk about other people negatively, but rarely talk to them about that. Nobody wanted to go up to him and just ask, dude, what's up with the veil? Fascinating. Why not? Of course, you probably at 3B could write down real quickly the last time you talked about somebody and said something about somebody you would not say to their face, but you would say it behind their back. Can you write down one time you've done that in the last few days? Where you said something about somebody you didn't want to say to their face, but you would say it behind their back. We're in the same place in this story. Fascinating, huh, how that works. Isn't it interesting how when you see it in a story you go, well, that's kind of dumb. Why wouldn't somebody just walk up to him and ask, dude, what's up with the veil?
If he erred at all, it was by so painful a degree of self-distrust that even the mildest censure would lead him to consider an indifferent action as a crime. Yet, though so well acquainted with this amiable weakness, no individual among his parishioners chose to make the black veil a subject of friendly remonstrance. There was a feeling of dread, neither plainly confessed nor carefully concealed, which caused each to shift the responsibility upon another, till at length it was found expedient to send a deputation of the church in order to deal with Mr. Hooper about the mystery before it should grow into a scandal.
They're going to send a group to talk to him.
Never did an embassy so ill discharge its duties. The minister received them with friendly courtesy, but became silent after they were seated, leaving to his visitors the whole burden of introducing their important business. The topic, it might be supposed, was obvious enough. There was the black veil swathed round Mr. Hooper's forehead and concealing every feature above his placid mouth, on which at times they could perceive the glimmering of a melancholy smile. But that piece of crape, to their imagination, seemed to hang down before his heart, the symbol of a fearful secret between him and them. Were the veil but cast aside, they might speak freely of it, but not till then. Thus, they sat a considerable time, speechless, confused, and shrinking uneasily from Mr. Hooper's eye, which they felt to be fixed upon them with an invisible glance. Finally, the deputies returned, abashed to their constituents, pronouncing the matter too weighty to be handled except by a council of the churches, if, indeed, it might not require a general synod.
Fascinating. Did you even see the word symbol is used right there? I hope you saw that when you were reading. See, I'm teaching you how to read closer. Did you notice that? They come, they sit down, they talk with him. He doesn't want to talk. They're looking at the black veil and they see it as a symbol of secrecy. He's got a secret. He's hiding something. He's hiding something. What's ironic? All the minister has done is put a veil over his face. That's all. He hasn't said anything. He hasn't done anything differently at all. It's just this veil. And people have to make assumptions and they immediately assume something terrible, something wrong. And they say, we may have to get together a synod, a group of people to critique what's going on here. In other words, they're ready to take it to the next level. Fascinating.
But there was one person in the village unappalled by the awe with which the black veil had impressed.
Bottom of page 278. Follow it with me.
When the deputies returned without an explanation, or even venturing to demand one, she, with the calm energy of her character, determined to chase away the strange cloud that appeared to be settling round Mr. Hooper, every moment more darkly than before. As his plighted wife, it should be her privilege to know what the black veil concealed. At the minister's first visit, therefore, she entered upon the subject with a direct simplicity, which made the task easier both for him and her.
Just to be clear, plighted wife means what? The bottom of your page says it. Who's the one woman that decides maybe it's time she asks about this? The woman he's going to marry. He did this without ever telling her he was going to do this. Now notice, this is moved to a closer friend, right? So now it's like, whoa, 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 what's going on with this thing you got hanging on your face? You're jacking everybody's brains up in our town. I need to know what's going on. Wonder what he'll say to his girl. Let's take a look. What do you imagine he says to his girl about this black veil he's put over his face?
After he had seated himself, she fixed her eyes steadfastly upon the veil, but could discern nothing of the dreadful gloom that had so overawed the multitude. It was but a double fold of crape, hanging down from his forehead to his mouth, and slightly stirring with his breath. "No," she said aloud, and smiling. "There is nothing terrible in this piece of crape, except that it hides a face which I am always glad to look upon."
She's not upset about it.
Sir, let the sun shine from behind the cloud. First lay aside your black veil, then tell me why you put it on. Mr. Hooper's smile glimmered faintly. "There is an hour to come," said he, "when all of us shall cast aside our veils. Take it not amiss, beloved friend, if I wear this piece of crape till then."
Whoa, did you see that? So she goes, hey, enough with this game. Come on, take the black veil off. Let's talk about what's up and why you did it. His response is not, no, I won't take it off. And in fact, this is such an important line that on 279 they put it there in large letters in the margin. Did you see it? There is an hour to come, he says, when all of us shall cast aside our veils. What? Dude, you're the only one with a cloth hanging across your face. And he goes, no, I am not. No, I am not. Everybody has a veil on their face, and there comes a time in their life when they have to take it off, he says. My time's coming, just like your time is coming. Whoa! Do you think this would freak you out if you were the fiancé, the lady who's supposed to marry this guy? Let's take a look at how she responds to him. Maybe she thinks her man is starting to lose his mind or something, right?
"Your words are a mystery too,"
Yeah,
returned the
mystery.
young lady. "Take away the veil from them at least." "Elizabeth, I will," said he, "so far as my vow may suffer me. Know then, this veil is a type and a symbol, and I am bound to wear it ever.
There it is,
Both
another
in light
another
and
time to use the word symbol,
in
right?
solitude and before the gaze of multitudes. And as with strangers, so with my familiar friends. No mortal eye will see it withdrawn. This dismal shade must separate me from the world. Even you, Elizabeth, can never come behind it."
Wow.
"What grievous affliction hath befallen you?" she earnestly inquired, "that you should thus darken your eyes forever?" "If it be a sign of mourning," replied Mr. Hooper, "I, perhaps like most other mortals, have sorrows dark enough to be typified by a black veil. But what if the world will not believe that it is the type of an innocent sorrow?" urged Elizabeth. "Beloved and respected as you are, there may be whispers that you hide your face under the consciousness of secret sin. For the sake of your holy office, do away this scandal." The color rose into her cheeks as she intimated the nature of the rumors that were already abroad in the village. But Mr. Hooper's mildness did not forsake him. He even smiled again, that same sad smile, which always appeared like a faint glimmering of light proceeding from the obscurity beneath the veil. "If I hide my face for sorrow, there is cause enough," he merely replied. "And if I cover it for secret sin, what mortal might not do the same?" And with this gentle but unconquerable obstinacy did he resist all her entreaties.
Wow. So he says to her, I made a vow. You might want to write that down at level 1. V-O-W, a vow. A vow is a promise you make to yourself or to someone else. He says, I made a vow to myself to wear this veil. I'm going to wear this veil. And she's like, but people might think that you're wearing the veil because you're ashamed you did something bad. And he says, I'm a human being. Of course I've done bad stuff. If that's what they want to think, let them think it. But people might not think you're a very good preacher all of a sudden. He says, if that's the price I have to pay, that's the price I have to pay. For the rest of my life, he says, I cover my face. As a symbol. And she's like, but I don't like it. And he says, I'm sorry. I have no choice. I made a vow. I made a promise. Very interesting, right? Let's keep going. See what happens next now.
At length, Elizabeth sat silent. For a few moments, she appeared lost in thought, considering, probably, what new methods might be tried to withdraw her lover from so dark a fantasy.
Top of page 280.
Which, if it had no other meaning, was perhaps a symbol of mental disease.
Uh-oh, maybe he's losing his mind.
Though of a firmer character than his own, the tears rolled down her cheeks. But in an instant,
She cries.
A new feeling took the place of sorrow. Her eyes were fixed insensibly on the black veil, when, like a sudden twilight in the air, its terrors fell around her. She arose and stood trembling before him.
She's scared of him.
And do you feel it then, at last? Said he mournfully. She made no reply, but covered her eyes with her hand and turned to leave the room. He rushed forward and caught her arm. Have patience with me, Elizabeth, cried he passionately. Do not desert me.
Whoa, this is an interesting moment. She says, she looks at the veil, and for the first time it freaks her out.